Evening. Welcome to tonight's training on Neuro-linguistic programming, or NLPs for short. My name's Andy Crook and I'm taking tonight's training session. And I'd like to welcome anyone who's joining us and anyone who's new to the group. Welcome along. Every week I try and do a topic or a training topic on a business subject. And tonight's is about NLPs, or Neuro-linguistic programming. Now, before you get worried and you think, oh my God, he's talking a load of sort of voodoo or witchcraft, it's broadly under that headline of neuro-linguistic programming, because I can't really think of a better title. Now, before anyone says anything, if you've done any research into NLPs, you'll realise that there is no clinical or scientific evidence to suggest that NLPs work. I want to stress that at the beginning, that I'm not a practitioner or a teacher of NLPs as such, but I like to put it under that framework because it's more to do with what not to say when communicating with customers. That's how I look at this subject in reality. It's not about what we say, it's about what we don't say, and we'll come back to that in a second. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce the people who haven't been on the live training before about what the purpose of the group is. The purpose of the group is to help garage owners become more successful in business. That's the reason why we do the free training. If you're watching the videos and you feel like you need more support in implementing any of the things that we talk about, then please message me directly and we can have a chat about you joining my Atomic Success Program, where we make tiny changes to your garage that make massive results. Enough of the adverts, let's get on with the training. So neuro-linguistic programming was devised and first came out in the 70s, and it was sort of widely used in the 80s, and it's still, I suppose, used in sales environments, but it's been very much so discredited in terms of the clinical trials around it. It's been sort of clinically and scientifically proven that it has no basis. But we don't operate in a clinical or scientific environment. We operate in the real world, in a garage where we're speaking to customers. And this is where I believe implementing some form of language or communication protocol will work. And we'll call it NLP for, I can't think of anything better. Now, the reason that it's been sort of called a pseudoscience, if that's the right word, it's kind of like, it's on the fringes of actual science. Yet it's used by quite a few famous people. If anyone's heard of Paul McKenna, he's an NLP practitioner. Whether or not he still says that or whatever, but he's one of the more famous people that use it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to start tapping my head when I'm speaking to you or anything like that, if you've seen any of his videos. That's not what this is about. What I want to talk to you guys tonight about is really about words that we should or shouldn't use when we're communicating with our customers. Now, I looked into this a fair bit when I was researching a training course that I built, that I put together, called The Business of Diagnostics. And one of the things I was anxious about when we were doing that was when I spoke to garages or customers, and I heard conversations between a customer and a garage during my research for that. When I started speaking to garages about it, and it really sort of made, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck go up when garages were speaking to customers because of the sort of language they used. Now, it's not that they were using the wrong language, but they were using language that could be interpreted by the customer differently. So, to give you an idea of how important or maybe not important words are, is 60% or up to 60% of all communication is non-verbal. So nearly 60% of all communication is not non-verbal. So it's not the words that we use, it's maybe the rhythm that we use when we speak, it's the tone that we use when we speak, and it's the body language and posturing that we use when we speak that can tell somebody something and it's all done unconsciously. And that's the idea behind neuro-linguistic programming. The words that we choose or to use or not use will have an unconscious effect on the recipient, the person hearing those words. So one of the things that I heard a lot when talking to garages, when we did some role plays, or I just observed them speak to customers, is the sort of phrase that I would use. Like, customer would either walk in or call the garage and say they have a problem with their car, and the garage would use the term or word something along the lines of, yeah, pop it in, pop it round the corner, we'll have a quick look. Now, that's possibly one of the worst things I think we could say in that situation, a quick look, because quick look suggests it's not going to be difficult to do, and if it's not difficult, you can't charge much for it. So one of the things that I sort of believe that is businesses are set up to solve customers' problems. The more complicated or complex that problem, the more that business can charge for that service. So if our immediate interaction with the customer is we're going to have a quick look at it, the customer, that infers to the customer, what the customer actually hears is quick equals cheap, which makes it very difficult then to charge what you need to charge to the customer without the customer feeling that they have somehow been sort of ripped off, if that's the right word, because they were expecting a much lower bill than possibly they were about to get, because you said you'd have a quick look. Now, it's really, really easy, for example, to say that. So want to help the customer and use those words, we'll have a quick look. Now, it doesn't matter whether that's the simplest job that you do within your business or the most complicated diagnostic job. Removing the word quick and almost banning it from use within your garage, and saying, instead of saying, yes, we'll have a quick look right now, say, let me have a look in the diary, see if we have a slot. You're in luck. Somebody can look at your vehicle right now. We will call you once we know more what's wrong, whatever the next stage is. But we remove the word quick look. The fact that you had to check the diary suggests that you're busy, and if you're busy, you must be good, which also automatically, if you think about what this non-verbal communication, or what those words mean instead of what the other words mean, if that sort of makes sense to you, by suggesting that you'd have to check to see whether you could look at their car, probably suggests to that customer that you're busy, which means that you're good, which probably infers that when the bill comes, it's not going to be cheap, which is the total opposite of yes, we'll have a quick look. I hope that makes sense, because it's one of the ones that I hear time and time again, and it's a statement that's banned in my garage. We sit down, and what that does, it does two things. One, the customers never thinks that what you're going to do is quick and therefore easy, therefore cheap. And secondly, it's reiterating the point to yourself that you always stick to your process. And your process isn't having a quick look. Your process is a predetermined number of tests to prove what is wrong. And that isn't a quick look either. So that's why it's banned in my garage. Now, I'm not suggesting that you guys go out there and start banning words that I deem are less than helpful. But it's a start. If you want to think about what do we actually say, when you start to build your scripts, putting some words in and taking other words out will make a difference. So the other that I don't like in a diagnostic context is we'll plug it in and see what comes up. Because the minute you say that, the customer thinks, because that's what you've just told them, and in terms of communication, the human brain sort of works on a conscious and unconscious level, and what you've just told that customer is unconscious brain is probably thinking, well, once they've plugged it in, the computer is now doing all the work. The person isn't doing any thinking, it's the computer. And you've probably had customers come up to you and say, I've been referred to you because your computer's better than the garage that I've just come from's computer. You've got a bigger, better, shinier computer, whatever it is. Which, it's not the customer's fault that that's why they're there. Because the other garage has probably told that customer that you've got better diagnostic equipment. Customers heard better computer and it's come to you to have your better computer plugged in. Well, at that point, it's the perfect opportunity to advise that customer that it's not the plug-in that diagnoses their car, it's the technician. And the technician will need to do more than just plug it in to determine what is wrong with their car. And at that point, that re-education, that repositioning, the different language used, probably puts you in a different position in terms of the customer's expectation when you say, or you outline how much you're going to charge for your service. Now, sticking with the diagnostic theme for a second, I've increasingly become aware of the negative connotation of the word diagnostic. So much so that lots and lots of garages that I'm speaking to are removing the word diagnostic from their vocabulary when they're speaking to customers because of effectively this sort of rubbish, if you like, science, the NLP, because the word diagnostic to the customer infers simply plug in the machine in, get in the codes, and then that's what a diagnostic is. So they're using different terms. Now, in the business of diagnostic course, we use the term diagnostic assessment. And what I found is people who've been on that course that were using the term diagnostic assessment now just call it an initial assessment, a vehicle assessment, a fault assessment. They've removed the word diagnostic, so the customer's perception is changed. They're not just plugging it in. The diagnostic somehow has become associated with the computer being plugged in over the years, and they're getting away from that negative term and they're just using something else alongside the word assessment. Whatever you put in front of the word assessment, it doesn't matter, but that doesn't suggest, an assessment doesn't suggest a plug-in, which is, once again, when we talk about diagnostics, that plug-in is negative. The word diagnostic has somehow become a negative. I still use the term diagnostic because I can't think of a better word for a series of tests to prove what is or isn't wrong with your vehicle. But I can see why, based on NLP, why certain garages have decided to drop the word. So when we get back to words that can or should or shouldn't be used in business when we're talking to customers, is words that have a negative emotional effect. So you've got to remember that most customers entering your garage are afraid. It's an environment they're not totally sure of. They're not sure what's going to happen. They're not going to sure how long it's going to take and how much it's going to be, which are the two things they really, really want to know. It's a very, very, very sort of uncomfortable place for a customer to be in. Something's gone wrong with their car and they don't know how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. So you want to use language at that point whereby the customer is reassured. You go back to, if they're an existing customer, previous examples whereby you say, right, we won't spend any money without your authorization, which you probably do anyway. That's how you operate as a garage. But just saying that to the customer at this point is very, very reassuring. And it's what we do when a vehicle comes up. We tell them that the first thing they know is exactly how much it's going to be for us to carry out that assessment. And once they know that, we can then tell them how much it's going to cost from there. And we make sure that the customer is aware that they're in control of the repair on their car, because they know how much the assessment's going to be, and then we tell them from the assessment what needs to happen next. Now that might be authority for more investigation time, or it might be this is how much it's going to cost to carry out the repair, this is what's wrong with your vehicle, and at that point they have a decision whether to go ahead or stop. And it's as simple as that. And it's that anchoring the customer back to the lowest point, or the most sure point of that bill, is what we like to do. So thanks for listening. Remember that 60% or up to 60% of your communication is non-verbal, but remember, picking the words that you use is absolutely vital when you're talking to customers. My name's Andy Crook. Hopefully you've been informed. Thanks for listening.